This is Artsakh, an ethnic homeland that seemingly disappeared overnight, a country you probably didn't know existed. After years of following the news, I'm finally here to see it for myself. Beyond the ethno-geopolitics, this was a journey like no other, filled with raw emotion, deep culture, and profound sorrow. What I witnessed is just the latest chapter in a deeply complex region. Across 129 countries, this was the single hardest day of travel I've ever faced.
There's something really wrong with the people here.
I'll show you my brutal trip here, the historical context, and my unfiltered thoughts on this extremely eye-opening journey. I'm Yanq Min. I solo traveled to 127 countries, all while working a full-time office job by maximizing my vacations and points. And now I'm finally on YouTube to take you along for the journey. Welcome to the adventure. I arrived in Baku and planned my trip to rent a car to solo drive to Artsakh, a 6-hour journey from Baku airport. The permit website to visit the area didn't work abroad and I needed to fill in my rental car information, but when I arrived the website was full of glitches and ultimately didn't work.
In full panic mode right now.
I had to completely upend my plans and was able to frantically find a less than ideal last-minute group tour.
Alright, 7:30 a.m. checked out bright and early. The tour group was supposed to come and pick me up, but instead they called a taxi for me to go to their headquarters, so there we go. All my taxis here.
So I arrived at our starting point. Here's our smaller van for the day. It's not the larger Sprinter van that they promised. I'm the first one here and I wait for the remaining 5 to arrive. We'll get crammed in the back and get intimate over the next 16 hours. So with zero hello and introduction from the tour company, we start off on time and we head off. I trekked halfway across the world, so I'm glad I'm still able to visit Artsakh. It's a shame the government's permit website didn't work. Here I am on a restricted guided tour with no freedom to explore on my own. So this is the only third ever group tour for me. I was quoted $300 for a guided solo tour, but thankfully I found this one for $80. So here we go, but I have no idea what to expect. And in the end, it'll be 48 hours before I see another bed, which will make this the hardest travel day of my life. Starting with the fact that although Azerbaijan had great reception all throughout the country, the one plus here is that I don't have to drive, so I can focus on the scenery, but that also means that I have to worry about my phone's battery for the next 16 hours, a true first world millennial problem, until we get to Agdam, the border of Karabakh, where they check our passports and our travel permits, which are needed to monitor our movement in the area due to remaining landmines from the war. Now to travel to Artsakh in the past, you can travel freely from Armenia for domestic residents, and for foreign travelers there was a passport checkpoint. And now the border between Armenia and the former Artsakh is completely closed and militarized. If you're Armenian or have any passport stamps visiting Nagorno-Karabakh, then you are banned from entering Azerbaijan. And now the only way to visit the area is by traveling west from Azerbaijan with permits. So as we enter, let's take a moment to discuss the history and the context of Artsakh. Now this is quite complex, so go easy on me. We have the Middle East as we know it, and above is the Caucasus region, where the term Caucasian comes from. Now Armenians were an original Caucasus tribe, and their territory peaked around 80 BC, and in 300 they became the first Christian state. The areas were diverse with the early Georgians, Iranian peoples, and in modern day the Kurds, and a group called the Caucasian Albanians, no relation to the Albania in the Balkans. And as the original Turks made their highway through the steppes of Asia, mixing with the local populations, the Seljuk Turks dominated their way through Iran and arrived in Azerbaijan, and continued their path through Anatolia to present-day Turkey. So for close to 1,000 years, the area was diverse. Now Artsakh was first recorded in the 8th century BC and was ruled by Armenian princes for centuries as the lands which control under the Romans, the Mongols, the Persians, the Russian Empire, and the Ottomans. Then the Russians came and took over, and in 1823 a survey showed there was a mix in the area called Karabakh, with the Azeris living in the lowlands, and in the mountainous regions, which we call in modern times Artsakh, an absolute majority of Armenians at 97%. And historically the Caucasus region was a melting pot, many different ethnicities living in relative peace until modern times things got spicy. Perceived as a threat to the declining Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Turks in the west, aided by the Muslim Azeri militia in the east, systematically exiled, displaced, and killed 1.5 million Armenians, which was a third or up to half of all the Armenians in the world at the time. Shortly after, the Russian Empire fell, and the Soviets came and took over using divide and conquer strategies to stir up ethnic conflicts in order to increase dependency on Moscow. And in 1923, the Soviets made Artsakh the Nagorno-Karabakh Oblast and transferred it to the autonomous Azerbaijan Oblast. And the meaning for the name, the area was called Karabakh when the Russians took over, and Nagorno was Russian for mountainous, the area where the Armenians dominated. Zangezur was awarded to Armenia, and Nakhichevan was awarded to Azerbaijan, creating this very interesting modern exclave where they were only connected by by flights, but that's changing soon. Then, as the Soviets were collapsing in 1988, all hell broke loose. Armenia, with its superior military tactics and experience, was able to break the siege and the blockade, connecting Armenia with Artsakh. And as a result, a total reported 700,000 Azeris were displaced and expelled, with reported horrors and war crimes along the way. And in Azerbaijan, ethnic violence would erupt, and up to 300,000 Armenians were forced to leave and ultimately resettled into the empty homes that the Azeris left behind in Karabakh. And during my Baku trip, I visited the eerie shell of the previous Armenian church in Baku. Azerbaijan struggled with political turmoil, and in the end, Armenia won the war. There were only several states in the US that recognized Artsakh, since the Soviets had no business drawing up fake lines for countries, but no other UN member recognized this breakaway country. But Azerbaijan did not forget, and I was able to go and see it for myself. For 33 years, Azerbaijan honed in on their oil money and advanced, something Armenia could not keep up with. And in 2020, when the world was shut and when we least expected it, Azerbaijan combined oil, Turkey, and COVID to invade Artsakh. They came in with devastating modern tech, and in 40 days, the war was over. Artsakh was completely encircled again. There is no end to the violence of man, even in this day and age when everything is recorded. But when you intentionally spread media of torture as a means of terror, this shows that for some, this was not about defending the homeland, but to let out all the evil in you and show us the dark depths of our human nature. I've seen the videos and it's haunting. Just a reminder for all future generations, the world is watching. 3 years after the invasion, the powers agreed for a full takeover. Every single last one of the 120,000 ethnic Armenians that lived in the area vanished and fled to Armenia. The land stood still, thousands of years of heritage gone forever. The self-proclaimed Republic of Artsakh officially ceased to exist. As we enter Agdam, the border city of Artsakh and the gateway into the mountains of Karabakh, you will see the sheer industrial scale of the Azerbaijani government working to rewrite the history of the land. It was previously an Azeri industrial hub. During the war, the Armenian forces heavily shelled the area and it became ghost town, kept as a frontier buffer city, and now the entrance to Karabakh, where the government intends to make it a Mickey Mouse resort town. So it is all hands on deck to build this area. And you may have heard of it in the Champions League, but it was this team, Karabakh FC, that moved from Agdam to Baku as a refugee team. So here I am stuck with my neighbors in this van for 13 hours. Just note that there's a better alternative coming soon with a new bus and train station, as well as Stepanakert airport hopefully finally opening soon. And here ends the paved roads. For the next hour and a half, our van will be trekking on this road of death. With the engine fumes and dust seeping into our car, I would have a massive pounding headache the entire day, even after asking the driver to circulate the air. It is from here the entire Karabakh area is being built up as part of a Great Return program by the government. Now this city, Agdam, is being completely replaced and being designed as a smart city for 100,000 residents focusing on industry and education. In total for the program, 140,000 residents are expected to return to the region by the end of the year. We saw the buildings in the distance, and as we got closer, we saw the true size and scale of what's happening here, and it is staggering. This is a display to the international world that Azerbaijan means business. Now we will see the capital city later, Stepanakert, which is now called Khankendi, and there are major plans for there as well, but for now it seems Agdam is seeing all the action. Now as the Armenian forces created a buffer zone, this particular area was pretty undeveloped until now. And then we see the traces and the remnants of where the Armenians once were. It is eerie, it's desolate and surreal. It's only a matter of time before all this is wiped out. So for now, this is a stark reminder of two wars. I immediately thought back at my time in Mosul, the ISIS stronghold in northern Iraq. Approaching the city, they still have massive potholes from airstrikes. And in the heart of the old city, a tragic and somber sight. Not just hearing it from family stories, but seeing it for myself, the devastation of war. Still very fresh. At that time, there were only very few residents who came back to rebuild their homes. I've felt the locals' pain rebuilding from war. Lining up for an hour in the only station in the city that has petrol due to ongoing supply chain issues. And here I am, honestly not that far away from Mosul, seeing yet again the destruction and tragedy that man can cause. It's truly sad to think that all of these units and houses had family history and memories that remain trapped here until they're all bulldozed. Before the government permit website failed, my plan was to solo drive, stay the night here and explore the area, and maybe trying to even speak with the locals. Although with the censorship that I personally experienced firsthand in the country, that would have probably been a bad idea. And here we just skip by one of the most important landmarks in the area, Askeran Fortress. And here in this city we see even more development, just long lines on and on of new houses. And finally, we get to the permit checkpoint and the entrance to the city of Stepanakert, where we check out our first stop. First stop, not enough Azerbaijani flags and blasting Azeri music. Like, okay bro, I get it, we're in Azerbaijan. Alright, so we finally made it to Stepanakert.
and it was so hard. It was about 4 hours of absolutely nothing, and then you see the mountains. Then you see this is a different land, different people. First reaction, tragedy, sadness. Everywhere you go, it's just empty houses.
So while the government is de-Armenizing the area, many landmarks are damaged, destroyed, repurposed, or remodeled. This monument still remains as a government propaganda for religious tolerance. This is the foremost symbol of Artsakh, called We Are Our Mountains, otherwise known as Grandma and Grandpa Monument. Built in the 60s, it symbolizes the connection between the people and the land of Artsakh. 6.5 hours later, this is the first time our tour guide said anything to us. Very fluent in English, she gave us the history rundown of Armenian people in the land, but then quickly shifted to negative connotations all throughout the tour, every time calling them the illegal, illegitimate government, squatters, and when we tried to counter and step in with our history, there was no changing the bias and the brainwashing. Which goes to show that monument only stands because the government dictated it so. But we saw from the flag show, the blasting Azeri music, and the rampant vandalism, the Azeris want everything Armenian gone. So we will go on throughout the rest of the trip asking to see this and that, and the guy will say yeah, we'll do it, but ultimately the entire tour after this will be Azeri oriented. And I, with my camera, will have to extract and pick out for myself to make my own trip. And here a moment of shock. This was supposed to be what I wanted to see most on this tour. I had no idea, and it is completely unrecognizable.
Actually, our left side was where they have built the parliament building of the fake government they built here. And when we arrived here, we destroyed the building and made the Victory Park.
And here we see the ruins of some of the previous Artsakh University. After the war, it was renamed Karabakh University and quickly remodeled to replace the Armenian heritage. I was furious. I know we were running late. We kept asking to see more of the city and the Armenian history, but they kept spinning us around, saying we're late, we need to see the university, when we don't want to see it. I wanted to see the main cultural icon here, which was the church, but they kept shutting us down, drove around it, which made me suspicious about what they're doing to it. So it was a shame. Stepanakert was supposed to be the highlight of the trip, but instead we did not step foot in the city. The controlled narrative of the region was getting tiresome, and we were honestly getting frustrated. And as we passed by one of the hotels that I was trying to book, let's talk about the hotels. There are no hotels listed on any of the major hotel websites. I had to Google search, and the hotel's own websites would pop up in the results. But you wouldn't know which one is a creepy, previously Armenian-run hotel, or which one is taken over by Azerbaijan, and there are also new hotels being sprung up. So I ran into a bit of an issue. I contacted this hotel, who stated a certain price on their website, emailed to make a reservation as there is no payment system. I got confirmed, but I asked them what the total price would be, and they said it would be 50% higher than I saw. So when I said no, give me the website price, they said that's for a different season. So okay, human error. I told them please change it so other foreign tourists don't see the same thing, and they refused, giving me attitude. So I moved on from these clowns, and I paid double to stay at the newly opened Palace Hotel, personally opened by Aliyev. Then a week before my trip, they sent me an email saying that my reservation was cancelled because of a state event. So they're connected to a group of 3 luxury hotels in the area, so I told them, alright, just rebook me to another room, and they still said no. I immediately got into the I want to speak with your manager mode. They ignored me for a few days, and then came back and said, JK, the event was cancelled, you still have your room. By that point, I was in the country already, dealing with the permit fiasco, switching out my plans to stay in Baku one extra day instead of Stepanakert. So I'm already tired at this point. I got scammed the moment I flew into the country, which later turned out to be almost $3,000. I contacted 6 different government agencies about this in Azeri language, and none of them cared to reply. Honestly, so far, all I've seen is oil money and no substance. So right now, I'm just thinking, okay, let's see what Karabakh has. And here, as we move up the mountains towards Shusha, you can see the entire landscape of the city of Stepanakert. Before and after the First War, the population was around 60,000. In 1920, the Shusha massacre drove out all the Armenians, and in 1990, history repeated itself and all the Azeris were forced to leave.
Alright, so at 2:30, 6.5 hours after we started our tour, we arrived at a restaurant. Seemed pretty nice. I'm not going to show you the food, but I ordered 2 things, and I told them, hey, it's going to be the kebab and the beef. So I said 2, right? And then when the receipt came, there were 4 items on there. I don't know what it was, didn't try to explain, just told me, hey, that's the amount. So I didn't know what it was. I was holding up the whole tour group, so I ended up paying. I didn't want to fight, but there's something really wrong with the people here.
So from the Baku rental car and street scammers, the petty hotel and now the restaurant merchants, you did it. You completely blew the country's image. It only takes one with the audacity to scam an international tourist, so they would rather scam rather than losing my friends and family as possible future guests. And to top it off, when I contacted the Azerbaijani government for help and they completely ignored me, I know there are good people here somewhere, but these guys need to be taken care of.
So this is Shusha Fortress, built in the 1750s by Pana Ali Khan, founder of the Karabakh Khanate. So on the back of the fortress gate, I think there's a fucking dirty ass diaper in the middle of the road.
Several art pieces all across 26th February, and there are still footages of genocide.
Mosques that were destroyed during the occupation were quickly restored as soon as the land was liberated, including this one. Destroyed buildings, and you have the heavy equipment coming to build new stuff, to make stuff like that. So this is some either unfinished or damaged building with broken windows and everything, but you see the concepts on the side. They're gonna make this into some fancy farmer's market. So I also saw old buildings that were being painted over, but also surprisingly, even shitty rundown buildings where people were living in it. It's just a mad dash free-for-all. People just claiming whatever's empty. It's crazy. So I heard that after the war ended, first generation of people who used to live here were granted first access to pick and choose whatever house they wanted and pay rent to the government after they reconstructed. So a little history about the city of Stepanakert, now called Khankendi. It was originally called Vararakin. According to Armenian sources, settled in the 10th century. In 1847, after the Russian Empire took over, there were 132 households, 80 of which were Armenians, the rest were Russian. And later, the capital of the area was changed from Shusha to Stepanakert. Alright, we're about finished with the tour.
And now the tour is finished. 6 hours back to the city. That was educationally fulfilling, but physically grueling and emotionally draining. I had no choice, so I have to be thankful that I could still see Artsakh, but never group tour again. Not just the fact that the tour company was just poorly run, but the heavy bias the entire day felt like a weight on my shoulder. So word to the wise for group tours, always do your own research. Final reflections. As a Korean, my family experienced death and loss through war, so the history and the recent war of this region hits home and matters to me. To think that in this day and age you can have a country that's totally wiped out, never to be able to visit again. This is the reality that Artsakh Armenians face, and us from Northern Korea. Not only that, yes, I understand victors rewrite history, but you have China continuously shutting down sites of the origins of Korean history. I know about a millennia of cultures trying to erase us. But how does this still happen? You have the Great Partition of India and Pakistan, but that was 80 years ago. You have magnificent German cities like Gdansk that were given to Poles, but the Germans can go visit again now. The two countries are working to normalize ties, and maybe Armenians will be able to visit the land again, but it will never be their home. And it is these places like the Balkans and Mosul that were the most raw and thought-provoking trips for me. Hopefully to share with you the world so that we can learn and hopefully stop repeating history. And there wraps up an amazing trip, taking the bros along to see the ancient sites of Cairo, Luxor, and then Athens, then hitting the solo road to visit new countries. The adventures don't stop. Thanks for watching. I'm just starting to record my adventures on YouTube, so subscribe and stay tuned for lots more.